Welcome to Big Blend Radio, where we celebrate variety and how it adds spice to quality of life. Welcome to Big Blend Radio, everyone. Today we're excited to have author Iris Mitlin Lav join us to talk about her second novel. But her second novel has some elements of truth to it. I think all good historical fiction comes from a true story. And this is set in the Depression era, and it really shows the strength and resilience of Jewish immigrant women coming into America. The book is called Gitel's Freedom, and it's out March 25th, 2025 through She Writes Press. And you can go to Iris's website, which is irismitlinlav.com. So welcome, Iris. How are you?
Hi, thank you for having me, Lisa. I'm fine.
I'm glad to have you on the show. Now, did I do the pronunciations okay? Did I get like any way towards the half mark?
It's actually Gitel. It rhymes with, it rhymes with little. Gitel.
There we go. And that was your mom's name, right?
That was my mom's name in Yiddish.
Yeah, in Yiddish. So was she an inspiration for the novel?
Yes, my mother was very much an inspiration for the novel. She had heroic resilience really through her life. I mean, when she was young, her mother, Rachel, in the story, was not happy being in the United States. She very much liked her life in Belarusia, had a lot of status in the community, and she never adjusted to life in the United States, and she never spoke any English. For 40 years, she lived here and didn't speak English. So she really had her thumb on Gitel and wouldn't let her do things that normal American girls do. Gitel was 5 years old when she was brought to the United States, so she adjusted very well and spoke English well. And Rachel did not allow her to, for example, play sports or go to friends' houses, things like that. And most consequential, Rachel did not allow her to go to college, which she very much wanted to do. She wanted to become a teacher. And that really had a huge impact on her life to not have had a college degree. Although she did go to something of a commercial college after, or junior college after high school, and learned to be a bookkeeper and some management skills, which she did use.
Well, it's interesting because the story also connects with what was going on in the world, during the Depression era with banks closing, and you've got a very strong financial background, right, in policy.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, and I think what was so interesting during that time, and I know this is more of a Jewish immigrant story, but I think it was also a story for women of all, all walks of life, that women at that time often were not really allowed to handle the purse of the household, right? Wasn't that always a man's thing, or in that time frame?
Was, although in the story, Gittel's husband, Shmuel, was kind of not a very practical man. I mean, he was someone who had spent a lot of time growing up studying Talmud and Jewish sources, and because Gitel had the background of a bookkeeper, I think she probably, although it's not explicit in the story, handled the finances. In real life, that was true. But he still insisted on being the decider. Shmuel insisted on being the decider in the family. And when there were a lot of clues and a lot of things happening as the Great Depression was developing that the family could have paid attention to. And Gitel kept insisting in the novel. I don't really know if this is true in real life, but in the novel, Gitel kept insisting that they do something different. And especially maybe postpone opening their business, which they did right after they were married. Gitel's father gave them a pharmacy
Oh,
and she
wow.
was a pharmacist and to run. And that would have been great because Shmuel could have just made the prescriptions and Gitel was a good manager. She would manage the rest. But what actually happened, and Gitel tried to say that they should take their money out of the bank.
Mm-hmm.
And their working capital and their personal money were in a bank that closed when FDR closed the banks. Most of them reopened, theirs did not. And they lost all their working capital and their personal finances. And so they basically lost their business. And that just had a huge impact on their lives. And one couldn't exactly find a job necessarily during the Depression. And so it goes into, the novel goes into what happened to them. But Shmuel, being a man, insisted that no, it'll be okay, it'll be okay, it'll be okay. We shouldn't, just put our money under the mattress.
Mm.
And that was a disaster. And that was, recovering from that was certainly important and showed how resilient Gitel could be.
Because when you think back then, I feel like sometimes our history is repeating ourselves. Like it's repeating in some ways. I think your novel's timely, and in regards to, we're watching all these crashes happening with crypto, with some banks have been closing. I know in
Yes.
California there was some, and I know you've got a background in finance and so doing this and looking up policy, did you have fun doing the research for the book?
I did. And actually, I ended up being surprised at how many clues there were that things that people should take action to protect themselves as the economy started cratering. And most people didn't.
Yeah. There's this
And
weird trust we have that everything's going to be okay. And yet the writing's on the wall. And I don't understand where you're talking about Shmuel, really kind of just know, it's like believing your doctor every time the doctor says something without getting a second opinion, right?
right. Or believing everything politicians say.
Oh, let's go.
We won't go there.
Don't get me started. but but this is so interesting too. When you look at women's rights and going through that, not being able to go to college. I know my mom went through that too. With her family, it was the only way was to if you were a nurse or a teacher, and she wasn't quite into doing that. She's an artist, and that was a big no-no.
Yeah, for
That's a
sure.
no-no. You don't do the arts.
Yeah. And some of the problems, so ultimately Giddel had to become the breadwinner. Shmuel had very poor health throughout his life, and things kept happening to him. He had also had bad luck. He had a terrible accident, and when he fell off a ladder and onto some concrete and broke bones in his back, but also he was actually malnourished as a child because his mother died right after giving birth to him. And in Belarusia, they didn't exactly have formula to feed him, and so it's a big deal. But the other thing is that one of the problems Gitel encountered is still with us, and that's women's wages compared to men's for the same kind of job. And so she only could make, when she had to take over as the breadwinner, she only could make 50-60% of what Shmuel had made. And Shmuel did not have a high salary because of his health issues. So, and today it's still the case that women are paid maybe depending on their education level, 20 or 25% less than men for the same job.
And often not even given the title. It's like here you're there to be, maybe do bookkeeping, right? Let's go into the finance side. And yet suddenly you're being the maid and you're being the coffee maker, that kind of thing too. So that's been also a big challenge for women, is to be seen as a professional.
In my first job after college, I had to insist that I did not know how to type, which I knew perfectly well how to do. But if, that would have happened to me if I had admitted that I knew how to type.
Oh, wow. You would have been the secretary instead of actually being able to run numbers and do policy. I mean, that's interesting. So is your background and then your mom's background what gave you the idea for the novel? Because I mean, obviously you in being working in finance policy, in fact, I just did an interview on this yesterday as we record this about policy for low income housing and things like that,
Yeah.
which I thought, I was thinking of you during this, going, you should have been on this show too. But
Right. Yeah.
there's it's kind of an uphill battle, but even for women to be in the world of policy making, that's that's not an easy road either. So did your background and your mom's background and family background lead you to this novel, Gittles? I did I do it right? Gotta get this, my new
Yeah.
language.
I guess it did. I mean, um, after, I graduated from college, I went to the University of Chicago. I wasn't sure really what I wanted to do, but I was already married, and my husband and I met it there and got married young, and we moved to Washington, D.C. for his
Mm.
job, and so I kind of lucked out because I was taking some courses at George Washington University trying to figure it out. And I was working for a, a man who had just left the Johnson administration because Nixon
Oh,
had
okay.
already taken over, and started a little consulting firm. And he had been an assistant secretary of labor for Johnson.
Wow.
And he had a union background as well. And I was very interested in that. And I got introduced to him by a distant cousin. And I started working there.
Oh,
And then when I was taking this collective bargaining course just for my interest. And because we did some bargaining in that job or represented some unions, I was offered a fellowship by the Department of Labor
wow.
and they paid for my graduate school. So it was very nice. And that's when I really got interested in public finance.
Wow.
And I really specialized in public finance, although I know something about other kinds of finance as well. And
Wow.
so I got an MBA,
Hmm.
and then I kept working for this for a while for this consulting firm. Then I worked for one of the unions, American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, and then I started work at a nonprofit called Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, which is concerned about
Wow.
the effect of government on low-income households. And in fact, it does housing work as well as work on health and
It's all connected.
income support and food stamps and things like that. And so, and the last 25 years of my career were at the Center on Budget Policy
That's
Priorities,
awesome. That's
which,
awesome. Yeah, because this ties into your book. I mean, it really does tie into the novel. You know what I mean? When I was going through and starting to read, I was going, this is so like you were meant to write this.
Yeah, well, I really, I felt like I wanted to write it. My first novel was very different. It was about life in Bangkok,
Yeah.
where we had lived for a couple of years for my husband's job. So, but this one is very dear to my heart, as you
Oh,
suggest.
yeah, this is amazing. And I think for women to read this and for men, for women, it's to tap into that resiliency because Gitel just keeps going. I mean, it starts like you're saying from not being able to run the pharmacy, and then it's one snowball left. It just kept happening and happening, and I don't want to give all of that away, but
Well,
I mean, it was just like you think one day, okay, this part's over. Now I can start again.
right.
No, just when you think it's safe to go outside, it's not. you know?
That's exactly right. Things just kept happening. And they happened, before I was born, they happened after I was born to her. And most of the problems that Shmuel had and that affected Giddle in the book are actually true. A
Mm,
lot of the book is fiction. A lot of the
yeah,
book, but I mean, the fiction part is a lot of the dialogue, a lot of the things that,
mm,
I mean, I don't know what happened on the boat when they came over. I don't know, things like that. I made that up,
mm,
but
yeah.
the
Well,
but Shmuel's problems are, pretty
yeah.
much what actually happened to Gittel and the family.
And also, do you when you were writing this, do you also thinking about creating a sense of understanding for people, even in generational understanding, for women, to maybe give them some, a boost of resilience when they read somebody else's story that, especially when I said at the beginning, linked on the truth, right? It makes you feel like, okay, don't give up, keep going. Nothing is the end of the world, and even though it can be the end of the world or feel like it, but also having some understanding of what people went through in these times and just the generation of it. When we think about people coming over on these ships and boats, even from the days of the Mayflower, that was not cruising. This was not Princess Cruise Line where you have entertainment and a five-course dinner with the captain. you know?
Well, they came steerage or close to or third class or things like that.
Mm,
Um, but
yeah.
my husband's family had a higher class ticket over. Um, so they didn't have to go to Ellis Island. They went to a different place,
Oh.
Castle Island,
Oh.
in New York. My family didn't come through New York. They came, as it says in the book, they came through Canada, through Halifax.
Mm, mm. Yeah, a lot of people did go through that. Now, in writing this and looking at the history today, right? Do you feel like it helps people, talk about that understanding, but to understand the history will help to understand today, you know?
I think so. I mean, the history does repeat itself, I think very much so. And at the before there was FDR, there was Hoover, who is
Hmm.
um, President Hoover, who is a terrible president. And one of the things that happened is he kind of ruined the economy by putting on really high tariffs.
Mm.
Again, I won't go there, but but
That can help. I mean, those kinds of decisions, it affects the people that are really trying, and then there's this there's a segregation that comes with people when you're really battling to get your foot in the ground, right? And you've got that spirit, that resiliency that like Giddle has, right?
yeah,
She has that. But all these things happen, and then what's going on in the country and the world affects just trying to make ends meet, right? Just the basic thing, and it's not from lack of brains. It's not lack of ambition, and yet there's always this dialogue that we have even today about like, well, why are these people like that? They're always like they just need to get over it and make the money. and
Right.
it's not what they think. You have to go back in history to be able to understand today, to see the journey of people, because sometimes it's like, just, hey, we were only able to get from A to B, but in that A to B, it may seem like a small step to other people, but so much was done in those little baby steps to the B. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, and in the novel, after, at one point, Shmuel has a massive stroke and he can't work for quite a long time. He never really could work after that, although he'd recovered a little bit until he had a second stroke. But so at that period of time, um, and that's true, and it happened when I was 10 years old. And we were living on charity. There were no
Mm,
safety net programs back then.
mm,
And, this was 1956. And the, I mean, we would get food boxes from our synagogue, from the synagogue that would
mhm,
help us. My mother, as in the book, Gitel had 5 older brothers, and they each pitched in to pay our rent. And
oh,
it was nobody's fault. I mean, um,
mhm.
but
Exactly. That's the
Gitel,
point. It's
yeah, no
it's
one was lazy.
mhm,
Shmuel couldn't work. Gitel immediately found a job, but it was difficult because I was 10.
mhm,
The the schools in Chicago, the elementary schools, made the children go home for lunch,
mhm,
which really impacted the ability of women to work.
mm,
That was really an important problem back then,
mhm.
because if your child has to um, come home for lunch, how can you work?
Exactly. Exactly. And that time we're still battling that now, where women can't afford childcare services to be able to go to work,
Right,
you know.
exactly.
And so we see those kinds of things, and even we do a lot in tourism and in hospitality, and sometimes women will go like, hey, I'm going to start a cleaning business, but then can't even afford to do a cleaning business in the community that is a good place to do cleaning, if it's just a cleaning service, right? Because I just know that this is a for real thing happening right now, because the housing gets, the housing market is just outrageous for a woman,
Yes,
especially a single woman. And sometimes your husband is disabled, or, or you're divorced. Oh my gosh, that's a big deal. Divorce was a
right.
big no-no. I keep reminding
It
people
was.
that divorce, even as a kid, if my age group, my mom's divorced from my father, and it was like, oh, and women with, single moms were looked down upon like they were floozies. You know?
Yeah, they were. I mean, there were very few. There were a few kids in my school, when I was young, that had single moms. But it was rare. It was rare back
Mhm.
then.
Yeah. So this resiliency is necessary now for women. I really believe your book was meant to happen, and that the timing is so incredibly important, because our economy is on shaky ground. I mean, the ground is shaking now, so it's not like new.
Okay.
It's shaking.
Right.
Um, and women are the nurturers, they're the moms. And, when things go rough, they're the ones who pick up their kids and try and find food and make things happen. And so I think the timing, did you think about that when you were writing this? That this could be so timely? I think women's history is always timely, but like right now, this is timely.
Well, I mean, I certainly, because I worked on low income problems for most of my life, I
Yeah.
was very much aware of the problems that single women or women um, didn't have someone to support them
Mm,
had. So I think it's always timely, but I didn't, right now, I mean, this book was finished 6 months ago. So it's hard to anticipate what's happening right now, which is
Mm,
putting the economy on a shaky ground.
mm,
But there are always people who have this problem, and there are several places in the book. So Gitel's first daughter, older daughter, who's about 13 years older than Ilana, got a law degree, and then she didn't ever pass the bar, and she just didn't, and because she decided to get married and immediately have children. And
mm,
Gitel was really upset about that in the book because she kept saying, a woman has to be able to support herself.
mm-hmm.
And she also instilled that in Alana, and that you never know what's going to happen. You need to be independent. You need to have the skills to make a decent
Always have your own
salary.
bank account. Always have your
Well,
own bank account.
yeah, that she didn't say, but it's the same story.
Yeah.
Just you know, make sure you have the skills to take care of yourself and
Mm,
any children you have.
mm,
So
mm,
that's an important, that hasn't changed.
mm.
That has not changed at all since the setting. She'd said it
Yeah.
in the 1950s, and it's still true.
Yeah. And, and that's 75 years ago, which isn't long ago, but still, it feels, well. I wanted to ask you this too. With this book, I think this is such a perfect novel for book clubs.
Yes,
Uh,
I think it
are,
is.
are
I
you
hope it
gonna,
is.
yeah, will you do them? Will you go and see them, or um, you know, do Zoom meetings or anything like that with a book club if they wanted?
Well, I'd be happy to. I mean, I love doing book clubs, and I it's hard to figure out how to get invited to book clubs, but things like this help.
Yeah. Well,
And
everyone,
it's
the website is Iris Mitlin Lav, LAV. So irismitlinlav.com, and you can pre-order the book while you're there, by the way. Just saying.
Can I show a picture of the book?
Oh yeah, yeah, go for it. There you go, everyone. It tells free. I love that. That's a great cover.
Thank you.
That's a
She
that's
Writes
a
Press makes beautiful covers. Yeah.
yeah, well, She Writes Press is fantastic. They're a great organization. Now, did you think that you were going to end up writing two novels? Because that's the other thing about women. We we're allowed to add different careers to our resume as we go, right? And so that's another part of what I love about what you're doing too.
Yeah. No, I didn't. I mean, after I worked pretty long time until I was the early 70s. And so
Mm,
I, and my work was pretty all absorbing. So
mm,
um
I can
I
imagine.
was like, I was the second person. There was the founder, boss of the organization. I was the second person, and I had a lot of responsibilities. Um, the but when I thought, well, when I retire, maybe I'll play some bridge. I used to like that, but when I was in high school, but I never have had time to do it recently. Or I had a whole list of things I might like to do. I used to like to make pottery when I was young, and maybe I go back to that. None of that really worked out. None of it was fulfilling. And
Ah,
so um, I began to think about what I'd like to do. And I realized that people liked the stories I used to tell about living in Bangkok. So I thought maybe I should write a novel about that. And it happened that someone I knew not very well, the wife of a high school classmate of my husband's, was had a novel published by She Writes Press, because I couldn't really figure out how I would get something published.
yeah.
A woman in her 70s who never has, the last time I wrote any fiction was in high school,
Mm.
so, but, and that worked out very well. And,
Well,
and
policy work too is writing. You're still writing, and you have to. I mean, and I think to get change is to be made, stories are the thing that sell change, because people don't like change unless you're at the other end of the spectrum needing the change. But to
Right.
get things changed, you have to have a good story with an example, and it can't be too long. It can't, it has to, a good story changes the world.
Right. Well, I did endless writing, policy writing. I mean, I wrote papers that we put up on the web, or things we gave to members of Congress or to state legislature. I did a lot of state work with state legislatures. I, you know,
Yeah.
I did, wrote journal articles and things, parts of books
Wow.
and so forth, articles and books. But I learned that writing was important. I also edited people. I supervised a lot, but it was my job to make sure what their work was okay. And we had pretty high standards at that organization. But the when I realized when I started to write a novel that that's a really different kind of writing.
Yeah.
And for A Wife in Bangkok, my first book, I had to have a developmental editor who, I mean, I had the ideas and I had written, the draft of the book, but I needed someone to teach me what's different between writing a novel and policy writing. But that worked out very well.
Do you enjoy writing?
I love writing. I love to
Oh,
sit down and write.
that's
Yeah,
awesome.
I don't have any blank page problem. If I have sit down at the keyboard, it's a lot
Mm.
easier now that there are computers.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
typewriters. I remember using typewriters, and and if you had to use whiteout, or we used to call it Tipex, I don't know, but it,
yeah.
yeah, and then you start seeing those white splotches everywhere, then you have to start over again because it's too many white splotches,
Right, right. So,
Yeah,
but that's but anyway, but I love, I sit down and write all sorts of things, and I'm happy
that's
to
awesome.
write. Makes me
That's,
happy.
are you going to do another novel?
No, it's it's a long process,
Yeah.
to write a novel. And it depends if my health holds up. I'm
Well,
70, I'm 79 now, that's getting up there, but
yeah, you're resilient.
I'm resilient, but my health is not. But so there was a bunch of outtakes, things I wrote for this novel that I ended up not using. Um,
Mm,
if in the process, I had a different idea of how to write this novel at first, and then I didn't
mm.
like it after I wrote it. So it wasn't right. So I have some outtakes which could make some interesting short stories that I was
Oh,
thinking of
nice.
doing.
Oh, yeah, that's wonderful. That'd be great.
I think that might be the next thing I do. But right now I'm busy publicizing this now.
Yeah, you have to do the media tour. I love it though. Well, thank you so much, Iris. It has been a pleasure, and you're an inspiration. And I can't wait for our audience to get your book. So everyone, go get it. It is Gitel's Freedom. Did I say it right? I've got to get this right.
Yes.
Everyone knows, I do podcasting, but I pronounce everything wrong. So I always get it right. And as I have it right, I get it wrong. So, but that's part of education. You just keep learning. So everyone, again, this is out on March 25th, 2025 through She Writes Press. Pre-order it. And that really helps an author too when you pre-order. So if you can do that online, that would be fantastic. Also go to your local bookstores and see if they can get that for you as well. So thank you so much, Iris, and happy Women's History Month.
Well, thank you, Lisa. Yes. Glad to have done this.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.